Hello, my name is Heino Papenfus, and I conduct research for quality liquid feeds and Kelpak. And I will be talking about how to set more beans on your soybean plant. Now, there are a number of things that you can do to improve pod set, which includes anything from improving your nutrient status, macronutrient and micronutrients, um, at maintaining a good water supply, managing the disease levels, but there is something extra that you can do. And this is something that came through in our research on Kelpak, a seaweed biostimulant that is renowned for stimulating fruit set in a variety of crops. And we will be going through that and how you can apply that to your soybean crop. Its Kelpak is made from a seaweed called the Clonia maxima that grows in one spot in the whole world, and that is on the west coast of South Africa, the most southern tip of Africa. It can grow there because it gets cold, nutrient-rich waters from the Antarctic that wells up, and with that nutrients, it can grow rapidly. When it grows rapidly, you can make an extract of the seaweed and exploit those beneficial compounds that loves to stimulate growth and promote growth. And when you apply that to a crop, you can reap the same benefits. So what is in a seaweed? Well, it's a plant extract, so it contains thousands of different compounds. I've highlighted some of the most important ones that you can look at or research, but these are just a couple of the main groups that help to stimulate more root growth in your crop and also benefit the whole fertilization of a flower. Phytolactans is a defensive compound in the seaweed, and we have found that it actually stimulates rooting in a plant in a very interesting way, similar to classic plant hormones, even though it is not a plant hormone itself. Alginate or alginic acid is the compounds that give seaweeds that slimy feel, and it should be in every single seaweed extract. There's some research that shows that it actually helps to chelate nutrients and help to absorb it into your plant. The one that I would like to highlight for the benefit of our talk today is called polyamines. Polyamines, again, are not classic plant hormones. It's a compound that occurs in every cell of a plant, and it helps with a number of things. It regulates cell division, but it also plays a massive role in stress mitigation in your crop. And mitigating stress during flowering is one of the most important things you can do to set more pods on your plant. They also have a very important part through the whole reproductive cycle of a flower, making them vital to have in your plant and to add more when the plant needs it. So this slide just highlights that even though you may use a seaweed, that the different products are not the same. In this graph, you'll see Kelpak on the left-hand side and a different products that is also made seaweed products, Clonia maxima seaweed products, made from the same seaweed, but you can see they vary in the amount of the alginates, that gel compound in the seaweed that should be there. Now, many things can affect this, the amount of seaweed that is used through extraction and production, and how often, how quickly it breaks down during the manufacturing process. Another compound is polyamines. As I said, this compound helps to mitigate stress in the seaweed and in the plant. And you can see when you compare it to different seaweed products out there, not all the products are the same. So when it comes to seaweed biostimulants for your agricultural production, make sure that you use a very pure one that only contains seaweed and water. If it's got a very high NPK ratio or nutrients added to it, typically you are taking space of some of the nutrients, also some of the seaweed, and you need to ask yourself, is this product right for this type of application? Typically, for flower applications, you want a pure seaweed with no added fertilizer. The reason I say this, we can look at some research done by Kilini and Nihala. You will see they did work on looking at the progression or the amount of polyamines that you need during the development of a flower. So Kelpak, we know, contains approximately 4 milligrams of polyamines per liter. And of that, putrescine is the main polyamine present in the seaweed extract. It's also the most common and smallest polyamine found in plants. And as you can see on the left-hand side there, putrescine is required at higher concentrations during active flowering. It decreases over time until you get to about fruit sets. And as the cells are dividing and the embryo is forming, the plant needs to metabolize and increase its polyamine levels again. So if you typically add a Kelpak spray during this process, you are adding those polyamines back in again, and you can set more fruit. To illustrate that this is not just applicable to a single crop, there's Kelpak as a large library or number of trials that they've done all across the world, especially in the Californian market. And you'll see it is when applying Kelpak during flowering, you can increase the fruit per plant, but also the yield in nut and fruit crops from different plant categories, but not the least is beans. And you can actually set more pods on a soybean plant or on a bean plant by applying it during flowering or the reproductive process. To illustrate this, I would like to show you a video on what it looks like when pollen grow. So this video was prepared by examining pollen grains under a microscope. And to do this, you need a sucrose solution and micronutrients like calcium, magnesium, and boron. And when you give it the solution, they can germinate and grow. Now, on the right-hand side of the screen, a little bit of Kelpak was added just so that we could investigate what the direct effect of Kelpak is on pollen growth. So after leaving the pollen grains in the solution for a couple of minutes, we start recording, and you can see how quickly the pollen grains start to germinate and grow rapidly. And this is what's going to happen in your crop. When the right compounds and micronutrients is in your flower, you could actually stimulate fruit sets much better. So the first research when we started testing this was done in Argentina. Now, there was a control yielding 64.4 bushels per acre. There was a Kelpak seed treatment that also benefited the soybean plants, increasing yield to 3.4 bushels. A V4 application that is well known in the industry to apply it foliarly at 2 bushel increase. But when we did a foliar application at the R1 flowering stage, this yield increased significantly compared to the control with 7.2 bushels. So this got us thinking. We have so much experience applying Kelpak on fruit crops that we should probably look at bean crops like soybeans. This trial was repeated in Aurora, Nebraska. Boost, which is the quality liquid feeds, liquid molasses-based fertilizer or fertilizer additive, if I can say that, was applied with Kelpak. So 2 gallons of Boost, 2 pints of Kelpak at V3, V8, and R2. Now, I've always said that soybeans are very forgiving for when you apply Kelpak, as they always respond quite well. But what we found is when you start approaching the R1 to R3 stage, you get a much more pronounced effect. And in this trial, increasing the yield from 72.8 for the control with another 6 bushels, giving a very nice ROI of $42.71. And I believe the soybean price was about $10 per bushel. So a very nice return um, on the soybeans with a reproductive application. We then had to ask the question, well, what did the boost in that trial actually contribute to fruit setting more fruit? And we found this paper by Yonghao Liu, I hope that's correct, on the importance of sugar in a flowering plant. And they said in their research that sugar can actually stimulate flowering and activate the flowering genes. They've highlighted that sugar can function as a signal to regulate fruit set and seed set under stress conditions and normal conditions. But typically, when you have high stress and the sugar is limiting, more flowers would fall off the plants. So even a low amount of sugar in the young developing flowers can cause fruit and seed abortion. So young little flowers do not attract sugar very rapidly when they compete with leaves and the stems. So don't always get the adequate number of sugar for the flowering process. So even under optimal conditions, sugar availability can be a limiting factor in young developing flowers and fruit. So by applying Boost, we found that we could potentially increase the success of flowers and also fruit sets of these little flowers. So when we looked at them separately, you'll see we looked at a 2-gallon boost rate at R1, and that yielded a very nice 3.8 bushels. When we applied 2 pints of Kelpak at R1 stage, that was related to 4.6 bushels of yield increase. And when we put the two together, it improved yield by 9.1 bushels. So it shows that it is important to firstly apply a Kelpak seaweed biostimulant. But when you combine that with the sugar product like Boost, which is a molasses-based fertilizer from cane sugar, you can actually set more seeds in your pods, and you set more pods on your plant, increasing yield. So to summarize, there are a number of things that you need to do to improve pollen germination and fertilization of the flower, and especially during flowering. The first of which is to minimize any application that can cause stress on your plant. It's not always very typical, but try not to apply any herbicides when you are approaching the R1 stage, as they can detract from your yield. You always have to give a good supply of potassium, zinc, boron, calcium, magnesium, and molybdenum, especially boron, which is often neglected. And people are worried to over apply boron, but it is a very, very important micronutrient to have during flowering. And then it's also important to reduce stress and maintain good soil moisture. When soil moisture is not maintained well during flowering, you can certainly reduce your yield significantly. The last thing that you can do is use a pure seaweed product like Kelpak and apply it during the flowering stage. It does not matter if it's the length of your flowering period. If you start applying it at the beginning of your reproductive cycle at the R1 or R2 stage, you can get great success with this application. So recommendations at flowering is to apply Kelpak at 2 pints per acre, Boost 1 to 2 gallons per acre. You can apply it anytime from R1 to R3. You can apply them together. And you can also combine it with micronutrients like boron. When you are making special passes to spray that crop, you can combine all these products together. Thank you for your time.